As Julie Weatherly said, it's weird to be doing this. In the interest of full disclosure, this is my first face-to-face presentation that I've done in a year and a half. I might take pictures of you, because I'm not sure how many more of these I'm going to be doing this fall. I'm scheduled to do a whole bunch, but who knows what's going to happen, and it really is. And I apologize for the lack of ambiguity, but as Gail knows, I was visiting with them in June, at the end of June, and our level of optimism about what life would be like in June is so very different than what it's like now. The past 3 weeks have changed dramatically in what's going on, and it's changing on a day-by-day basis, and that's the problem. Is what we're dealing with is remember in the pre-times when we used to do things like blow out birthday cakes, do what's called apple bobbing. Do you think you're ever going to do that again? No way. No, yeah, it's something like this. But remember when we first started with April last year, remember way back, April last year, I'm trying to figure out where I can get so I don't have reverberation, remember we thought we could make it to Memorial Day? We just didn't clarify which Memorial Day we were talking about. Now we're hoping just to make it to Labor Day? What the hell? And so it's really sad how things are changing. And it's interesting. I live in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania schools start either today or tomorrow. You guys have been in school for a couple of years already. And so, yeah. And so it's interesting they're starting, but the number of problems that we're having because the school boards are having to make all these individual determinations, similar to how you guys are doing this, about masking or not masking. And I was dealing with this yesterday as I was driving out here. It's a fun drive, by the way. I don't know what the hell the construction is west of town. But it's interesting about this. When will that be done? It's interesting about this is there are districts that have decided not to have masks and districts that have, and parents choosing to switch their kids at the last minute. And Pennsylvania is heavily gerrymandered in districts. We have over 500 school districts, and many of them are very small. This one district yesterday had 22 kids enroll because they don't have a mask mandate. 21 of them have IEPs, and they don't know what the hell they're going to do with these kids when they show up tomorrow, or things like this. So that's the kind of things we're dealing with right now. And you guys are, well, you're well ahead of the curve. No, you're not. But it's interesting about this is we're dealing with this. So what's also, and I really truly wish that we did not have to have this topic today. I really wish we did not have to talk about this. I really wish that we would all have happy life experiences where everyone was doing well and we weren't experiencing negatives. But just think about the negativity that many of these kids have experienced just in the past 18 months. I mean, the big thing we pay attention to in education is what's called, and especially with trauma, is called the ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. Many of these kids have been living adverse childhood experiences this past year. And this is posing a problem for us as we are trying to address this and with the long-term ramifications of this. Now, for all of us, it's been the lack of term, new normal. But everyone's perception, everyone's dealing with this has been so very different. We've all been under the same quote-unquote pandemic, but how we respond to this has been incredibly different. Okay? I mean, when it first started, my wife and I, we had finally become empty nesters. Okay? Both of our kids were in, our son had graduated college, our daughter was in college, we were just happily, we like each other so, and she's a professor, so she'd go teach on one floor, I'd go teach on another floor, we'd have lunch together, we took naps together, we took the dog for walks, we hung out together, we'd formed our own little pod. We were happy. A few weeks later, our son moved home. And some of you have had kids move home, understand what happens when this occurs. Our water bill went through the roof. How many times does he have to flush the toilet? How long? Why is it? What does he do in like a 2-hour shower? Okay, our trash, the amount of cheese we bought, just all these different things. Many of you experienced this. He was in charge of a major North American distribution thing for Arc'teryx. It's an outdoor clothing company, and they just shut down all of their North American staff, and, well, he came home. And he started applying for jobs, and he rigorously applied for 5 to 6 jobs a day for over a year without getting responses. And what does that do to his mental status? Yeah, we like him. Luckily, we like him. And so it's interesting about this, but it really sucks. And then my daughter was working at a school for kids with autism in Delaware, and they shut down, and she said, I'm just going to hang out here for a while, then it all shut down. Well, she too moved home. That further made things worse. But it's interesting about this. Now she's working at a school for kids with autism in Virginia. And she's working on her master's in special ed, and you'll appreciate this. She's going to be certified at the end of the year. She's worried that she's not going to get a job. She's taken all of her BCBA classes. She wants to work with kids with behavior problems. She's had like 4 years of experience. Dad, will anyone hire me? Maybe you can call some of your friends. A little sucker. Yeah, I saw another thing. But we've all experienced this very differently. There are parents who have lost their jobs. There are teachers who have become too ill to work. I had COVID. It was not pleasant. We had it, all 5 of us. My son's girlfriend came and lived with us also. Went through the house. I had 102 fever for 15 days. The terrible part was the night sweats. I would go through like 4 or 5 T-shirts a night. It was ugly. Things like this. So, but we've all had very different experiences on this. Some of you are trying to, my parents are coming to stay with me next Wednesday. My dad has all sorts of heart problems, so I'm trying to stay very safe about this because I don't want my dad to die. So we're all dealing with this very differently. So when we talk about trauma, we're talking about all kids. We're talking about all kids and the needs for this, and the need for trying to provide appropriate supports for these kids. So when we talk, you may have kids who may seem to be doing really well. And hopefully you do. Hopefully your kids are doing really well. But underlying, there's a level of anxiety. There's a level of fear. And there's a level of anxiousness we just have to address as a part of this. And so when we talk about all these things, it may not be there all the time, but it's an undercurrent that you need to pay attention to. So I'm going to address this and pay attention to this. All right? So I'm also going to show some things. I'm going to have a new journal that's going to be coming out later this fall. Journal of Disability Law and Policy and Education. Working on it with Mitch Yell. We're going to do a whole bunch of issues on there's this one topic out there that kind of seems to be overriding things out there in special ed right now. I forgot what it's called. Oh, COVID. Yeah, so that's what we're going to be focusing on this fall. So we're going to have this. I will get more information on this. All right. The second things, Mitch and I, we have a blog that we run. It's spedlawblog.com. We will never ask you for your email address. We will never try to sell you anything. When we have books that are when we write books, we put them up there just so you can see what's going on, things like this. But we will never try to sell you anything. But it's a way we try to keep the field informed about what's going on. We also have a Twitter feed. SpedLaw Blog is the Twitter thing. It's been a little inactive because I was traveling a lot this summer, but I'm back. I'm ready. Don't worry. It's gonna kick back in. But we're just, again, free. We get a lot of information. A ton of information comes our way. And we just want to get it out to people as much and as quickly as possible. So these are 2 free avenues that we have to get information out there about where we are with this. Okay. I wrote a document, which I think I emailed to Marcy. It's a Section 504 accommodation guide, how to write a Section 504 plan. It's about 60 pages long. The first 8 pages are on how to write a 504 plan. The last is what we did is I surveyed I work with about 35, 40 school districts right now, and I surveyed them about what their main disabilities are. And for each of those disabilities, then we came up with a possible suggestion of what are the accommodations for that disability that you might see. So just to make it a lot easier, because we're seeing individuals who are writing 504 plans who do not have a clue. And I'm not trying to cast aspersions, is that there are very few people out there who are trained in this. And there's very little guidance about this. And for instance, like my son got a 504 plan when he was in high school as a result of a head injury. And when I went in there for his 504 meeting and about this, and I had all the people sitting around the table had me for special ed law. And they basically said, tell us what you want. And I didn't jerk them on this, but it was actually, that shouldn't be how we write 504 plans, folks. It's free, it's out there. We're trying to get it out to as many people as possible because we're seeing a lot of school counselors writing 504 plans. And they don't get a lot of guidance and things like this. So we're trying to get this out to as many people as possible. This document's been adopted by 12 states and 2 of our territories for how to write a 504 plan. So we're pretty excited about what's going on. I know Guam just adopted it 2 nights ago. And so that's why I can say 2 of our territories. Palau, who I'm presenting to on Thursday at midnight, by the way, because of the time zone change. They had to get up at midnight and present to them. They also adopted it. But when I talk about this is it gives guidance to just get it out to whomever can be benefit. What also, and this is an important thing, and why I'm sharing this with you is I sent a form to Marcy, I think this morning, which I think will be available for you guys out there, is if your district chooses to have a mask mandate, and this, I know it's district by district in here, and you have a parent who says, I can't because of a medical exemption. There's a form that I've sent to Marcy as a sample form. I sent it to her as a Word document. Feel free to adapt it and however you want that works for your specific district about this, but how to clarify this. If a parent, but this is the important point. This is what the kicker is. If you have a parent who turns in a medical exemption for a 504, you are now on notice the child potentially may have a disability, and if you don't do anything about it, it may be a child fine violation. So any parent who turns in a medical exemption for a mask mandate, don't just have the secretary take care of this. You need to think very strongly about whether this kid has a disability that may need a result of a 504 or even IDEA eligible. So don't just accept, yeah, okay, we got this medical exemption, things like this. You need to strongly consider this because you're now on notice that this kid has a medical issue. You're now on notice. There's no dispute. The parents have turned you in a form signed by a medical professional. This kid has a medical issue. Yeah, you're not going to, you've got to deal with that sucker. So you need to do something about this. And this is what's tripping up school districts across the nation. Because parents are turning in, they're saying we have this medical exemption because my kid has a breathing problem or they have anxiety or there's a sensory issue. Yep, there's a variety of things why these kids have these medical needs, but the district then doesn't do anything about this. School district, the parents then are alleging you knew that this child had a problem and you didn't deal with this. So pay attention to this and pay very close attention to these. So take everyone seriously. Now, it doesn't mean that the kid is necessarily going to get the full shebang of evaluation. And the shebang is the technical term. They're not necessarily going to get the full shebang, but you need to strongly consider, is this kid potentially going to need special ed services or a 504 accommodation as a result of this? Okay? So just keep that in mind as we address this and keep this in mind as we pay attention to this. Because it's going to pose some significant problems because too often we're assigning that responsibility to administrative staff and then we're not dealing with the second potential fallout as a result of this. So 504 is this is what's also, and I appreciate Julie finishing with one of the comments she made about districts not implementing 504 accommodations. And and she was mentioning the Doe v. Withers case from West Virginia in 1992, 1993. It's a fun read. Most cases are not fun reads. I'll shoot you my email. I'll be happy to send it to you. It's just a fun read. Mr. Withers couldn't meet with the parents because he was out hunting. And the kid, and the sad story, part of the fallout is the kid lost a wrestling scholarship as a result because he was not able to participate in wrestling. It was going to be his ticket out of his school district, his town in West Virginia. So there are some ramifications, but the teacher ended up having to pay $60,000 to the parent as a result of this. So what I do is I take that case. It's a really easy read. Many of these cases are not very easy reads. But I find a teacher who's not implementing a child's IEP or 504, I just put that in their mailbox and I don't tell them who it's from. Yeah, I just let them read that and say, hey, bucko. All right, so, okay. All right, I can say that. All right, more. Okay, more. Mitch and I wrote something about defining educational benefit. It's in Journal Teaching Exceptional Children. I think I also emailed this to Marcy. I sent her about 30 emails on Saturday. That's what I do. And so, but it's just basically an update on this. This was in the journal Teaching Exceptional Children, came out last summer. Mitch and I co-edited the special edition of Teaching Exceptional Children, but it's basically something you need to pay attention to, because what we're having to focus about this is, and don't worry, I'm going to swing back to this on trauma, is we're thinking about these kids who, because of having severe problems in schools, because of trauma, are not able to access or participate in the curriculum, and are having trouble understanding what they need to do as a result of their educational experience, so therefore they're not getting an appropriate education. So don't worry, it links back. Don't worry, we're going to hit trauma really hard on this. You'll be okay as a result of this. But it's something we need to pay attention to as this, all right? The U.S. Department of Education has a COVID handbook, strategies in safely reopening elementary and secondary schools. Julie just referenced this. You guys are reopened, so you don't need to pay attention to this, but it's trying to think about this from a national perspective about what we need to do as a part of this. And it's posing some problems because the target is moving on a day-by-day basis. I understand there's a school district in Indiana that has announced that it's going all virtual. Yours?
My school is the one that was announced. It's just my school in our district.
Just your school, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's just temporary.
And it's just temporary. Well, and
Hopefully, that's what we said last month.
and hopefully, yes. I understand things about this. And there are colleges and universities that are all trying to get kids back in school. Just in the interest of full disclosure, my day job, it's actually a night job, but it's my night job is I only teach at night, as I'm a professor in Pennsylvania. Today is my first day of classes. But I'm here with you, so this is more fun. Last Wednesday they came up with a mask mandate for all classes, all indoor things. Why Wednesday last week? Because tuition was due on Tuesday. So yeah, conspiracy theories on this, but I love this. But we have a betting pool among the professors. How long before we go all virtual? Is it 3, 6, 9, or 12 weeks? We're going to go all virtual at some point. We're just not sure when. 6 weeks because we want to make sure we get the money. 12 weeks because that's around Thanksgiving. Just don't come back. So those seem hot things. I've talked to professors across the nation. I was on the call yesterday with a professor from Texas. They delayed their their start 3 weeks because they're hoping that the Delta variant wave crests and that things start going back to normal. So we'll see how this happens. Okay, more. Okay. The law in COVID-19, remember, just remind you, the current law and regulatory law, Julie pointed this out very nicely. Things have not changed. We still have the same rules that we had in February of 2020, which seems like a world away from where we are now. It truly is. It's amazing. And so we have to think about this, how very different things are, what's going on. Same exact rules. Now, when we talk about due process hearings, she said that there has been a number of not many due process hearings except for in Pennsylvania. Last year, I was involved in 85 due process hearings in Pennsylvania. Okay? I was a hearing officer for 10 years. They changed the insurance rules, so I stopped being a hearing officer. Just in the interest of full disclosure, of those 85 hearings I was involved last year, 79 of them we settled because the school district had royally messed up. Not just kind of messed up. We're not talking just like they missed something by like an hour or two or things like this. They royally messed up because they didn't do what they were supposed to be doing. So and many of these are experiences where kids had some severe problems and they just weren't being dealt with. Now I was involved in one of the bullying cases that Julie did talk about, and it was a really sad state of affairs where the district knew that the kid was being bullied. And another one parallel to that, so the district did not know the kid was being bullied. Or the one that I was heavily involved, just finished up, where a girl, just to give the fact pattern real fast, about trauma, 9th grade girl with intellectual disabilities, IQ of around 69, 70, was sexually assaulted in the bathroom. No dispute, they had cameras showing her going in the bathroom, being dragged in the bathroom by a boy in her class, things like this. Being sexually assaulted, she immediately reported. They suspended him for 3 days. And then they said, because he has an intellectual disability, we don't have any other placements for him to go to. So he came back 3 days later and sat right next to her. for the remainder of the school year. Her anxiety level went through the roof. Other kids started making fun of her about what was it like to be raped in the bathroom by him, constant questions, things like this. School district said, well, we have no other place to put him. So where else is he going to go? So we settled that one too. Yep. Actually, that one I worked on the parent side. Okay. But case law, she very eloquently stated, we're not getting a lot of guidance on the case law, and that poses a problem. Okay, more. Okay. So when we talk about what do we mean by a free, appropriate public education, I'm not trying to talk down to you, I'm just trying to ground you. When we talk about what the importance of this is, the free, appropriate public education is reasonably calculated to enable a child to make progress. Right? That is our determining factor. We are obligated for kids to make progress. Okay? And if a kid is not making progress, you are not doing your job. And if you're not doing your job, then maybe we can do like they're going to do in Florida, withhold your paycheck. Okay? So truly, this is your obligation. And it's really interesting and saying kid's not making progress, it's the kid's fault. That is not a defense.
How about the parents' fault?
The parents' fault? Well, it's interesting, and thank you very much for saying that. Is the parents' fault? No, it's not a defense either. So you control what you can control within the bounds of what you have, things like this. Now, if the parents don't send the kid to school, all right, let's pick up on this. Because there are some parents who are not wanting to send their kids to school, all right? And so it's not because so you have to look at, is it because the kid is being bullied? Is the kid lacking the pre-skills for the programs? And you address all of what you can control within the bounds that you have. And if you can say, we've looked at this, we've offered all these things, we've all things like this, then, yes, you can say it's the parent's fault there, but you make sure that you document the snot out of everything you've looked at. And you're going to hear me say that multiple times because I've got a head cold coming up. So it's interesting about this. And it gets dark light here. It's dark late here. I live on the East Coast. I tried to go for a bike ride this morning at 6. Where the hell is your sunlight? Right? Yeah. All right. So anyway, I'm pissed. All right. So yeah. So I rode around the parking garage for a while until I could go out and find things like this. But it's interesting about this is, just in case you didn't know that, write that down. But it's interesting about this is your obligation is progress. More. Okay. So I've said this, experiences are very different. Despite it's all the same pandemic, we're all dealing with the same issues, we're all dealing with it very differently. We truly are. And there's some people who have incredible amount of anxiety as a result of this. And there are some individuals who are newly engaged coming to school board meetings. There are people who have never, ever thought about coming to a school board meeting before who now understand when the school board meeting is occurring, are showing up and participating. Maybe this isn't quite what you want. It's fun to watch the video clips of what the parents are saying at these various meetings, things like this. I wish they were half as engaged on other topics relating to education. I don't want to be fully engaged. I don't want them to be that fully engaged. Half as engaged on these things. But we're seeing a level of participation that we've not seen before. Change, well, if we were to have this discussion at the end of July, our discussion then would be so very different than our discussion right now. And so I wish that was not the case. I remember sitting with some of the staff when I was here at the end of June, and we were so optimistic at that point. So change. We all, though, have a desire for normalcy. What the heck is normal now? Yeah, and so there are some things that, it's amazing how I've become really close with the Zoom. And my ability to participate in meetings. I went to my first department meeting last week. Okay, I know this is how it shows how bad person I've been. My first department meeting, and I was late because I couldn't find my shoes. I hadn't worn my shoes since the beginning of March. And you'll appreciate this, when I did find them, they had cobwebs in them. All right? Okay? I'd become one with flip-flops. Okay? Huh? Sweatpants. Oh, those were on my dress-up days. Okay? Yeah, it's interesting. I lost a lot of weight during the pandemic, and now I only have 2 pairs of jeans and that fit. So it's like, what the hell? And so that's what you get, jeans, all right? Because I don't have any other. I realized this yesterday as I was packing. I only have jeans, and I'm okay with it, all right? I've clean shirts, though. I got clean shirts. I got all sorts of clean shirts. I even got haircuts from my wife. But it's interesting about this, and she botched one real bad. She's like, and so, yeah, it was good fun. We're just unsure of when. But you can see the level of exhaustion we all have with this. Because it may be getting worse before it gets better. Because now, as I was listening to the news on the way out here yesterday, now we've been talking about the Delta variant, now we're talking about the Lambda variant. Lambda. I'm not making this up. I'll make up some other stuff later, but I won't tell you when. Okay, so that you have to stay awake. So it's interesting about, yes, there is another variant out there called the Lambda variant that is starting to rear its head. And so it's, I'm just the messenger here. Don't blame me. Don't blame me. Okay, so trauma, all right? Can we click our heels 3 times and just get back to normal? God, I wish so. I wish we could. I went 1.5 years without seeing my parents. And when I finally saw my mom, she just cried. She just cried. It was wonderful. And so, a lot of things happened to me over that year. You'll hear me, if some of you may hear me talk about this later, I was in a plane crash. I had COVID. I had all sorts of problems. Yeah, it was terrible. Don't do it. All right? But yeah, what do we mean by normal? Okay, more. My kids are not a joy to have in class. Some of you experience this on a daily basis. And let me make sure I understand, and I appreciate what they say this about this, is I come from a family of educators. Education is what we do in my family. My dad was the superintendent of schools for many years. When he retired, he had 35,000 students in his district. He's now executive director of the Urban Superintendents Association of America. He works with all the large school districts. My sister was a reading specialist and principal. My wife teaches ESL at night. You may not be aware that if your Apple iPhone gets damaged, they send it to my town to repair. Yep. All the workers who repair them do not speak English, by the way. My wife is teaching them English at night. She's an architecture historian during the day. My daughter wants to be a teacher. My daughter's in her training program to be a teacher. My son's heavily involved in the cryptocurrency world. He may be richer than all of us combined. I have no idea, but it is what it is. But he'll be a teacher someday. Teaching is what we do. So I stand in front of you proud that I'm in education. And I'm proud of how educators have responded to what's going on, because this is not what you signed up for. This is not what your training provided you for. So thank you very much for what you're doing, and thank you for your continued service, because for some of you are the most stable parts of some of these kids' lives. The regular conversations you had, the regular Zoom sessions you had, the regular interactions, it was invaluable what you did. So I thank you very much for that, okay? But we all lived through a terrible year. Okay? All right? And I appreciate this one because I had the big lice case that was appealed to the Supreme Court. So yeah, when I was a hearing officer, okay? So what can we do? First, be compassionate. Seriously, be compassionate. And this is interesting about this is these kids are living a life that they did not sign up for. That they're living a life that they're dealing with at no fault of their own. And parents, the level of stress that some of these parents are experiencing is just palpable. Because parents last year trying to arrange childcare, trying to arrange work, and now they're thinking that they may have to be doing this again. Some of these businesses have been shut down. Some of these people have lost their house, and it's amazing. So just be compassionate, because people are going to be making demands on you. If they're not, let me know. I've got some extra parents who I can send your way. Okay? But these are going to be parents who are going to be making demands on you because they're truly not dealing with what they thought they were going to be dealing with. And just a month ago, we thought things were going to be very different. So realize that, be compassionate because they're dealing with some tough things. Second one, focus on the laws. Focus on the laws, okay? And one of the things about this is, yes, I live in Pennsylvania, and I've been reading the hearing officer decisions about this. And but what we're seeing is you're going to have to continue to provide services. You need to think about this. And what's interesting also about this, there was a great article in The Lancet, not a journal I typically read, but someone pointed it to me, that we've lost nationwide between 1 million and 3 million kids this past year. Kids who've dropped off of our radar screens, who are not participated, who aren't there. We don't know where they are now. They may have moved. We're not sure if they moved or not. They haven't asked for forwarding information about changing school districts, what's going on. It's really posing a significant problem. So I don't know, but I'd be happy to send you the article if you want. But it's interesting about this is we're having severe problems with where we are with this. But be focusing on what you're going to have to still continue to provide. But we've become really creative about providing things. Think about the knowledge you've gained just in the past 16, 17 months about the provision of services. About some of you, and also how you mask up and how you get all dressed, the hazmat suits that we have in the back of our closet that we can then pull out and then go into kids' homes and provide services. Okay? It's really interesting what we've learned. But keep in mind, we're going to have to probably continue with this. I wish that was not the case. But just these last two things. They go with number one, but just be a decent person. Just be a decent person, all right? I mean, one of the things we always say in special education is our obligation is we are not obligated to provide what's best for kids. Okay? And in fact, if I ever attend a meeting and you're saying, oh, we need to do what's best for a kid, I'll probably taser you under the table. Because that's not our obligation. Our obligation is to provide appropriate. So when parents are asking for things, keep that in mind is we have to think about what can we do to help make appropriate services for these kids and provide appropriate information to help them as a part of this. And last, just be helpful. Just be helpful and realize that we're all stressed. We're all stressed and we're all dealing with this. Okay? I like to fly. I like to fly a lot. Okay? I didn't fly yesterday on my way here. It's a joke because I didn't want to experience the weirdness on planes. Okay? So you pull up the YouTube. That's all you're going to see is all the weirdness that people are experiencing. So keep that in mind as we talk about this. All right? More. So child find. Okay? What I want you to think about this, and we'll get more into trauma in a few minutes, but specifically child find, is you need to work very closely with your gen ed staff and make sure that they are fully informed about keeping you aware of what kids are having problems. And so any kind of triggers. Now, again, it's not necessarily going to opt these kids into a full evaluation for these kids, what's going on, but what you think about doing is at least you're now paying attention to the problems that they're experiencing. And one of the things I say to a lot of directors of special education is at the end of each marking period, make sure you have all these triggers built into your calendar where you're going to look at this kid, this kid, this kid, this kid, this kid, and this kid to see how they're doing. And if they're doing fine, that's great. Put it again at the end of the next marking period that you're going to look at these kids. So you're constantly putting triggers in your calendar that periodically you're going to investigate what's going on with these kids. But you need to make sure that the gen ed staff broadly understand what's going on. And also the support staff. Okay? I'm dealing with some horrendous issues relating to transportation problems. And I think I sent a questionnaire for transportation IEPs, what things about this. Because I was heavily involved in a really sad case. It was in the pre-times, where a sixth grade boy with pretty significant needs relating to autism, his 8th grade sister would walk him to school every morning and home every afternoon, things like this. They walk to school, it's 1.25 miles to and from school. Why is that important? School district didn't provide transportation if it was within 1.5 miles. You understand you all understand this, things like this. All right, things. There was a day in February where his sister had to stay late from school because she was trying out for something. I don't remember what it was. She sent him on, walk home by himself. Okay? He dropped a Pokemon card in the middle of the road, was hit by a truck, and killed instantly. Okay? I worked on the parent side of that one. What's interesting about this, so I developed a questionnaire for school districts to pay attention to transportation needs. And what we have to think about this, a variety of this, because we also need to work with school bus drivers because they are seeing things. They are seeing kids, and we'll talk bullying later, but kids with disabilities are disproportionately bullied. Disproportionately bullied because they have an articulation disorder, a stature issue, memory deficit, just a variety of things. They're disproportionately bullied. And the kids may keep it together for the rest of the things, but it's the bus drivers who see these things. So work really closely with your bus drivers. And now, again, it doesn't mean that the kid is necessarily going to get a massive change in what's going on, but at least it's now on your radar screen. And you need to pay attention to these problems. We have some kids who are missing school because they just refuse to get on the bus because the other kids are picking on them. They refuse to participate. They refuse to do these things. So when we have kids not showing up for school, we have to uncover all the other things that pay attention to this. Okay? But Child Find is not just a special ed thing. It's a whole district thing. The other thing is that the parents are using this new thing called email. It's new. It's wonderful. Okay? You should try it. No, it sucks. All right, okay, so I'll go back and find out how many emails I have to deal with after this. And I had a great day the other day. I taught one of my classes, getting ready for it. I had 20 emails, 19 of them were junk. I went through and just deleted. I had success in life. It was really wonderful. Okay, but I share this with you is parents are sending emails. If they are concerned about an issue, it shouldn't just stop with the teacher. They should let others know about this. So make sure when parents express any concerns, any issues, they at least bring it to a team and they're considering what's going on and they're building from there. So it's more steps like this. Okay? So how do you make a determination about this? And I appreciate the question because what you have to think about is what I'm going to encourage you to do is think broadly. And think broadly. And I'm actually it's really interesting about this. And I've talked to a number of attorneys across the nation about this, is I don't really care what the label is. Parents get fixated on the label. They really, truly, I'll appreciate this. When I was a hearing officer, I had a hearing where it was on a Friday, where the parent absolutely demanded that their child be labeled as intellectually disabled. IQ of like 82, okay? Because they wanted SSDI. Okay? And on Monday, 3 days later, parent says, no, don't want my child labeled intellectually disabled or mentally retarded because it's such a negative thing. Kid had an IQ of like 57. And it's like, what the label really do matter? And parents, think about the old days. So we could label some kids as having Asperger's syndrome. Right? Parents, oh, sure. Things like this. Now so I don't get fixated on labels. Okay? I just want to get the kids in the door because the labels don't dictate the instruction. The present level needs dictate the instruction. But parents don't understand this. So when we talk about this, does the kid have needs that can't be handled by the general education classroom? That's what dictates it for me. All right? So it's a second of that two-part test. First, you have to have a disability. Second, you have to have the need of a special education teacher. And that 504 document clarifies that for you. People don't understand this. And here, I'm going to shill a book. I'm going to shill. Is it okay?
Sure.
Thanks, all right. I was going to do it anyway, whether you said yes or no. All right. I just wrote a book for the Council for Exceptional Children about what school board members need to know about special education. It's cheap. It's a cheap book. I'm serious. It's a cheap book. It's called A School Board Member's Guide to Special Education. It just came out about a month ago. Because school board members do not have any clue what special ed is. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, okay? Things like this. And all the proceeds go to CEC, so I'm not like, I'm going to get rich off this book. If you want a book I get rich off, I'll tell you about one later. But it's interesting about this. You should buy hundreds of copies of it. Pass it out at Halloween. You'd be the talk of the neighborhood. What's interesting about this is why I wrote this is I did a presentation to the National School Boards Association conference, and it was for new school board members. And we did a survey of what they thought special ed was. And I'm not making this up. What they thought special ed was is they thought that 80% of special ed is kids with Down syndrome.
Wow.
I'm truly serious about this. That 5% of kids who are in special education are kids who are deaf. If you missed what I said, kids are deaf. Okay? 5% are kids who are blind. Bet you didn't see that one coming. Bet 5% are kids with physical disabilities. 5% are kids with autism. And 5% are kids with ADHD. Now, if you add that all up together, that's 105%. I'm aware of that. I got that. I can do the math in my head. Things like this. But we then looked at what society, we did some quick studies of what society members with no education background think special ed is, and they think Down syndrome is the biggest category in special education. So when you're dealing with new parents who are first getting them in the door, having their kid getting for special education who don't have an education background, they think that they're going to be like all these other kids with Down syndrome. Because that's what they think special ed is. Remember, Down syndrome is not even a category, and intellectual disabilities is only about 6.5% of your prevalence population in your fair state. So if a kid eligible under Section 504 needs a special education teacher, they should get an IEP, not just a 504. Because remember, it's a two-part test for special education, and if they don't get the second part of that two-part test where they need a special education teacher, they can get a 504. And so, and 504s tend to be shorter, though I have seen for some kids with food allergies and nut allergies long. And it's interesting. The problem is that document that I was telling you about, the 504 document, does not have anything on food allergies. And as someone who has food allergies, you think I would have included that? I didn't. Okay, I'm not that smart. All right, but yeah. So, but it poses a problem. 504s tend to be about 1.5 pages, 2 pages long. They're only about 2.5% of your school-age population, as opposed to about 15.5% otherwise. So it is a smaller thing. The problem, what we see, is there's a lack of enforcement of 504s. I mean, in order for them to get into IEP 504 enforced, they have to go to the Office of Civil Rights, and it's a 2-year wait. And many of the districts are playing that. So that poses a problem. Okay, more. Okay, more. All right. So here's an actual picture of a school psychologist doing an observation. Okay. Okay, because they want to be social distanced. Yep. Yep. Yeah, you can't see it really clear, but there she is peering down on the kid. Okay, things like this. All right. Okay. You do what you have to do. All right. Well, remember, think what happened is when COVID hit, a lot of school psychs could not get in to do like those EI evaluations to make determinations about placement in kindergarten programs. So they were really flustered as a part of this. All right, more. Child find continued. Okay. All right. Basically, if you can't get some of the information because you don't have access to the kid, document what you can. Just truly document what you can as a part of this. Okay. More. There's also some kids who are more prepared for school than others. Okay. They're ready, things like this. Right? And I'm not sure if you can see this because of the glare, things like this. I was speaking in Miami right before everything shut down. It was like 2 weeks before everything shut down. I was in Miami. And summer isn't fun when you're hungry. That was a sign of the bus stop right before we got our Uber. Okay. But what's interesting about this is you're dealing with all sorts of kids. So when we're talking about trauma, we're talking about kids. It's a huge umbrella term. And there's a lot of problems relating to this. And there's a lot of problems, and there's many different things, and people respond to things very, very differently. Okay? My wife has her sister are very close they're very close in age. They look alike. Things like this. One is very much an optimist, and one is very much a pessimist. And they could not be further apart from each other on attitudes, things like this. Raised the same, did the same activities, same friends. I married the optimist. So Yeah. So I'm pretty happy there, things like this. All right, so a lot of things I'm going to be talking to you come from this book. This is, I'm showing another book, all right? It's okay, things like this. This is put up by LRP Publications, applying a trauma-informed framework to the IEP process, from referral to development. Okay? I wrote this with the Director of Trainings for the National Association of School Psychology. And so they approached us about putting this together. And so a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about this will come from this. But talking about why this is so very important. Because I'm going to hopefully change your attitude about how to couch things, that hopefully then when you take this back to kids, it'll make it a lot easier for them to be successful. Okay? All right. So, so is this a major issue? Right? I have a block on my computer, so I can't access news sites before 4:30 in the day. You may think that bad. I get things done because of this. I also can't check YouTube, the Facebook, the Netflix. I can still access Showtime, but there's not much on there. So, but before 4:30. But I was carousing, and I just all about. I've got 20 different news sites that I hit at 4:30 every day. Things that this was at Huffington Post. How to spot signs of trauma in children during COVID-19. So it's mainstream. This is not something that is just educators talking about, people of concern. This is a mainstream news site. Things like this. So this is important, and this is something we're all having to deal with. Okay. Another thing that I sent Marcy, which I think available for you, is you need to get better better information from your gen ed teachers. And why I say this is when you general education teachers do not get a lot of good training on what is included as part of a present level statement for an IEP or for evaluations. And so when you ask general education teachers what they need to write, they don't know what to do, so they shut down. Do you want one sentence or 700 words? Since they don't know what you want, they shut down. And it poses a significant problem. And if you ask special education teachers and directors, that's often one of the last things that they have to either have to get the information from the parents or from the gen ed teachers. It's one of those two. They get information from everyone else because they're chasing this down. So what I had for you is a checklist and then a sample report from a gen ed teacher. And I sent this to Marcy, which will be available for you. But a statement of any forms they filled out, the date, the information. Good God, I wish this was on more forms. I have gen ed teachers who will write, yeah, this kid was a great kid. I really enjoyed working with him. But you have no clue when that person worked with that kid. I need that information. Because when I'm reviewing IEPs, because that's the first thing I look at when I'm called in on a due process hearing. Because what do I do for a lot of districts? They'll send me their files on Thursday, and by Sunday night I'll have a report written for Monday morning meeting about yay or nay whether they should file for should fight the due process or settle. I go to the IEP and go to the present level statement, and I can't tell you how many bad present level statements I see. Okay? And so from gen ed teachers, we need more information. The date the information was provided, a list of the student's strengths. I don't care if you have to stretch to get a strength. Give me a strength. Like this. No, it doesn't have to be academic. Thank you very much. Because one of the best strengths I see is student comes to school regularly. And for some teachers, that's a negative. You know who I'm talking about. You all know who I'm talking about. The best day I had as a teacher was when one of my kids did not come in on the bus. I remember this really well. Yeah. It's because the bus was late. I thought the bus had already come in and we started the day. It's going to be a good day. It was a Friday, too. Yeah. He came in like an hour and a half later. I'm here. Damn it. All right. Okay. List of concerns you have about the student. List of concerns you have as the student's gen ed teacher. What are your concerns as the gen ed teacher? Not concerns about anything else. And then a statement of how the student compares with the average student in the classroom. Not the highest achieving, not the lowest achieving, to the average. Because this is going to help us dictate the level and need of services for this child. How this student compares. A statement describing anything out of the ordinary regarding the student's schedule or day, like they come in late, sometimes they leave early on Wednesdays, they go to speech, anything like this. Any accommodations or modifications used that are helpful, and a list of the current grades. If you can get this kind of information from a gen ed teacher, you're going to be happy. You're going to be happy. I'm serious about this, all right? So I have actually a statement here. Okay? September 24th, 2021, which has not happened yet, but it will. I'm optimistic. All right, things like this. Like, what are the students' strengths? What are the areas of concern? And there's a copy available for you. Okay? How does a student compare to other students? Grades, factors affecting the class, accommodations. If you can get this kind of information, you'll have a really good sense of what's going on with this kid in the general education classroom. And this is the kind of information we need. This is the kind of information you need to help make informed decisions about the program and placement for the child. Getting back to your great question earlier, because that helps dictate the present needs that then dictate the services and the extent of those services. Okay? So anyway, there's a copy available. All right? Trauma and education. So here are some examples of some problems that kids, again, I'm talking about an amorphous blob trauma. There are so many things under this big umbrella. But here are some examples of some problems that kids could have relating to trauma. Right, first, difficulty with memory, reduced cognitive capacity, sleep disturbance, language delays, impulsive actions, need for attention, withdrawal, attachment difficulties, poor peer relationships. And these things manifest themselves in very different ways. And that poses a problem for us. And that poses a problem as we're trying to address these things and trying to pay attention to them. And that's what's really set for things like this. But there are many different ways that this may manifest itself. The problem is, and this is really interesting about this, and I felt really sorry for the teachers last fall. Because last fall, there are when we went out for COVID, at least you knew what the kids were like. You'd work with the kids through the year. You had a sense of what there was good, bad, and different kinds of things like this. When you switched in August, you didn't know who some of these kids were. You didn't know what to expect. And now that you've gone back to school, many places face-to-face, you're at least getting some version of what these kids are like and some better sense of where we are with this. And so it's helping out dramatically, but you can then start noticing if there are issues. Okay? More trauma. Okay? Why school performance is dramatically affected by trauma. And why I share this with you is think about this. And this is something we need to pay attention to and address as a part of this. Okay? And I've looked at a lot of statistics on this. And luckily, we have a lot of statistics. That sad part is we have a lot of statistics on this. So more likely to fail a grade. Okay? And that is one of the indicators we're looking at. More receptive language difficulties, more expressive language difficulties. And I remember this really interesting. There's a word out there for word retrieval problems. I can't remember what it is, but there's a word out there for it. And I remember these kids would come in and they would, stay awake. And it's interesting about this, but these kids could not tell me what they did over the weekend because they were living, many of my kids that I worked with my first year of teaching did not have running water or electricity. So every Friday when they would go out on the playground or things like this, we would stuff food into their backpacks. So no one else saw this. They knew we were doing this, but they would try to get them food through the weekend. And if they had a 3-day weekend, it was terrible because we were really concerned about this because many of these kids have experience. And luckily, I live in Pennsylvania with all these Amish stores near us, which basically they're called bent and dent stores, where you can get Cliff Bars for 10 cents a piece. I'm not sure. I think the expiration date is like 12 years ago, but they don't go bad. But you can get packages of food, and we'd sip things like this just as a way to give them some calories over the weekend. When I talk about this, is these kids would come back and they could not articulate what happened to them over the weekend because they couldn't remember or they just lacked the verbiage to understand what was going on to them. So the expressive language difficulty is really a problem. These kids are suspended more often, expelled more often. It's a good thing for them, yeah. Have lower scores on standard achievements and more eligible for special ed and related services. So keep this in mind, okay? So when I talk about this, I'm laying the foundation for we've got kids who've got problems. There is no dispute that there's kids out there. It's something you're going to deal with this, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to start thinking differently about these kids. And I'm going to try to switch you on a few things on this. The current model is what's wrong with you. New model, what happened? What can we do to help as a part of this? Okay? Remember, as I said before, these kids are often leading a life that they did not choose. And this is something that I try to pay attention to. It's amazing because I do a lot of workshops for general education teachers who say, this kid is taking up too much of my time. I get this. And I also do a lot of workshops for principals. And you'll appreciate this. I was doing a workshop for a group of principals, and this is one of the more negative comments, so it really sticks out in my mind. And the principal said to me, and I remember this was in San Diego, he said, if I learn, I think about learning about special ed the same way I think about the new pool in my backyard. He said, if I learn how to clean this pool, that new pool that we just installed, I'm going to be cleaning that pool the rest of my life. If I learn about special ed, I'm going to have to deal with it. So I'm here because I have to, but I'm not going to listen. So I stood right beside him the whole time. Okay? Damn it. And so I share this with you. But you think about this, is we're responsible for this. But these kids, and I really mean this, and so I say to gen ed teachers and principals all the time, that these kids have disabilities at no fault of their own. It's not like they wake up and say, I think I'm going to have autism today because it has a better bumper sticker. Okay? So these kids, we're having to address them and pay attention to this as part of this. Okay? So more. Okay? So what's interesting about this is we may never know what the trauma issue is. And that's the problem. And I just read, what was it, Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. Right? He's a great book. I like him because he's a runner. Right? I'm serious, he's a runner. Right? He was a Canadian mile champion when he was in high school. But he's talking about kids who are experiencing things related to Jerry Sandusky at Penn State and the experience with child abuse. And some of these kids, we're not sure whatever happened to this because sometimes we suppress things. We may never know what happened to these kids. The history for some of these kids is unknown. So when we talk about what we're dealing with this, some of these things are unknown. And we're not sure what's going on, or they don't talk about this. It's not like they came in, hey, I saw my cat die today. And no, that's not what, they don't start with. Some kids will start with that, by the way. Okay? Bad things like this. Classmates may be traumatized. They may not know. Right? So these are unknowns as a part of this. The problem with this is we're talking about an issue such that it's so peculiar that I have a colleague that I work with who say maybe we should almost inform this as almost a special ed category in of itself because of the individual needs and how these kids are manifesting themselves. I'm not quite to that, but what's interesting about that is we have to think about the level of needs that some of these kids do experience again. But one I want you to think about, and I'm glad you're here and I thank you for your service, but we need to think about the whole school and what we can do to support these kids. Okay? And you don't need to single out the kid. I'd like to call you up here because you've had trauma. Yeah. Dr. Reinhardt. Yeah. But I'm not going to call you up here, but we're going to call. We deal with all the supports, right? What are the issues in your school? Okay. What's interesting is the town I live in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. It's a town of about 20,000 people. But in my town, we have 10 large Amazon warehouses. And when you fly over, it's like these big mushrooms. It's thanks for you guys buying a whole bunch of cheap plastic crap that everyone in my town has employment. The pay right now is $24 an hour because they can't get anyone to do it, things like this. So what does this do for paraprofessionals in our school districts? They're gone. They're gone. You can write paraprofessionals into the IEPs all you want. You're never going to get one. They can get double pay at Amazon. Okay? Now the job sucks. Okay? And no one lasts longer than 6 months, but it's really interesting about this. Why I share this with you is the shift at Amazon starting at the end of September, is going to go to Christmas shift. The shift is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. There's only 2 shifts. Getting parents to participate who are on a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. shift as part of an IEP meeting or 504 is because even if they get a half hour for lunch, let's explain what the half hour for lunch. My son worked there for a month. You may be on one side of the warehouse. You have to get to the other. Your half hour starts there. You may not, it's not when you think, then you have your half hour. You have to get to your lunch, eat it, and get back within 30 minutes. So we're doing phone calls with parents. Some of these phone calls are lasting 15 minutes because that's all they have. So we're doing these over multiple days. We're having trouble getting parents in for meetings. We're also, and this is a sad part about this, is many parents are working the 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. We have many stories of kids being left at home alone. And I share this with you is because we have these kids who previously were doing fine, define however you want, now desperately needing adult attention. Desperately needing adult attention because parents leave at 5:30 at night, come back at 6:30 in the morning, there's no kid, there's no parent around, and now all of a sudden you've got these kids who are really just desperately needing adult attention. And I don't blame the kids. I don't blame the kids. And what we have to think about this is why I share this with you is with this one kid who was doing really well in school, all of a sudden he was interrupting, he was clinging, the teacher, he was basically sitting next to the teacher every chance he could. We found out, it took us longer to realize this, by the way, than what was happening, that basically he was left alone at home, he was given a cell phone to call a grandparent if there was a problem who lived 30 miles away. But basically he was told, do not leave your house, we'll be back. Parents, when they were there, were asleep. Because, yeah, you'd be asleep too. Right? And so the parents are trying their best to try to make ends meet, trying to do what's going on for these kids, but it really is affecting where we are with this. Okay? So the issues in our town is getting parents in for meetings. Getting parents in part of this. Train all staff to support students and identify behaviors. All staff, not just the teachers. Classroom teachers need to ensure safety, trust, and security. Okay? You need to have your teachers just talking to each other more. Talking to each other more and including others as part of this. This is what, if there's nothing else you learn today, learn this, is have teachers share with others. They've identified a problem, tell someone else about this. Just constantly telling some more about this. Okay? But more on this later. Think of this, is that all behavior is communication. I can't emphasize this enough. My daughter has just finished all her BCBA coursework before she started her master's degree, and she's basically, it's wonderful. We just sit there and have behaviorist conversations. It's really cool. This is the girl who doesn't think she's going to get a job, okay? But yeah, I'll have her call you, Tara. All right, so yeah, okay, yeah, things like this, all right? More, okay? So basics. These are the basics, and some of these kids are missing these things, okay? Some of these kids are missing these things. I already showed you the sign of the kids are missing food. Some of these kids are missing clothing. We do clothing drives for these kids in the winter. I can't tell you how many kids show up in shorts and flip-flops in February. And so we have to get them the right clothes about this. Or I remember going on a field trip with my kids in November, and it was to a wilderness reserve area, and it was cold, and there were kids showing up just in shorts and a T-shirt. And so we kept them on the bus and kept the bus heated because otherwise it would be miserable for them. Okay? Warmth, security, relationship, friends. These are the basics. Right? So these are really, that lay the foundation for it. Here's your role. Here's your role. Safety. You need to make sure everything is safe. Everything is safe. Okay? And everything is, I would show you, I keep a Leatherman knife on my keychain. I got pulled at I was in a school that had metal detectors. It did not signal the metal detector. So I told him about it later, and about a half hour later, the school resource officer came to arrest me. I was there as a hearing officer, and I said, make that go away. Yeah, but autonomy, choice, control, build relationships, cultural sensitivity, understand trauma, these kinds of things. Okay? Keep these in mind. That's what your role is. Now, I'm starting to go through this a little faster because I've still got a lot to go, all right? Okay? But safety, security, nurturing, all teachers just reflect on these things, okay? So what do we mean by safety? Okay? Reduce bullying. Pay very close attention to this. Be the model of this. Be the model so individuals are not bullied. And I said earlier about how disproportionately kids with disabilities are bullied. And it really does affect what's going on. Clear, consistent rules so that everyone understands what's going on. A predictable structure. We are sometimes the most predictable parts and structured parts of some of these kids' lives. And COVID threw that out the window. And these kids who rely on us to be predictable. They rely on us to be structured. Okay? Daily schedule, but just kind of check the classroom. Just check the classroom and see what we can do to be supportive. Okay? Relationships. Okay? Trust, security, safety, consistency. Not just school conversations. Right? My kids, when I was a special education teacher, I talked more about professional wrestling than I ever talked about anything else that was not school. I'm not talking about the amateur stuff like you see in the Olympics. I'm talking about the real pros. Okay? Because what happens in the squared circle stays in the squared circle. Those kids, those professional wrestlers were my kids' heroes. And when I taught in Kansas, it was NASCAR. We talked about NASCAR a lot. It was so much NASCAR all the time. It was like, but that's what these were the kids' heroes. But they had no other adult to talk about these things because every adult in their life otherwise was saying, "Sit down, be quiet, do this, turn this in. You didn't turn this? What's going on? What's wrong with you?" kinds of things. It was a way to actually get them to talk about things and realize that we could talk about things as part of this. Okay. So I'm going to start flowing. Don't worry, I can talk faster. I come from a family of auctioneers. All right. Okay. Responsive teacher behaviors. Okay. Even though I grew up in the South, I can talk fast. Okay. You need to make, so this is easy, all right? Creates or maintains student responses, routines, okay? Tells children when something out of the ordinary is going to occur. Now, there's some kids who are really good at this. Other kids, it shoots everything, okay? Like when my daughter was leaving her job, they were going to have a party. She had to leave her job in May to move, and they were having a party in the classroom she was having with autism. Where they say, "We can't have the party." The kid would come in and say every day, "We can't have the party. We can't have the party. We can't have the party," because when he had the party, it signaled that she was leaving. So they get fixated. That's all he would say all day. "We're not going to have a party today. We're not going to have a party today." That's all I fixated on this. And some of you have worked with these kids, and so it wears on us. Okay? Offers children development the appropriate choices, anticipates difficult periods. Just a variety of things that are important as a part of this. Why are these important? It's back to the nurturing role that we play as a teacher. That's how many of us got into this, because we had someone in our life who was nurturing and showed that what we can do. Okay? I have student teachers this fall. Yeah, I'm not sure how much of student teaching they're actually going to do. Okay? But one thing when I met with them last week, what did I say to them? Keep in mind the most important teacher that you ever had in your life, and be that to someone else. Keep in mind that person and think about when you encounter a situation, what would that person do? But also, keep in mind the worst teacher you had and run away from whatever they would choose to do as a part of this. Okay? We can learn from these things. Okay? Teacher behaviors. Okay? Here are teachers' reported behaviors about kids and what they engage in. Okay? Here, and why I'm getting this, because we're going to talk about diagnosis in a second. Here's what the behaviors that we see. This is just from gen ed teachers. I wrote a book for gen ed teachers for ASCD, because ASCD at the time didn't have anything on special ed. And basically we talked about this, about teachers, what gen ed teachers need to know about special ed. And this is what we came up with as part of a list, is what we have to think about here. And why I'm talking about this is these are the kinds of things we see. Inappropriate language, disrupting classroom, poor academic performance, difficult peer relations, class clown, totally withdrawn kinds of things. These are the behaviors we see. Okay? Here are the diagnoses we get. Okay? Those lead directly to these kind of diagnoses. And that poses a problem. Okay? LD, EBD, ADHD, ODD, OCD. I can go acronym out the wazoo if you want. Okay? I did that to a bunch of principals the other day, and they had no clue. All right? Post-traumatic PTSD, RAD, grieving. There's all sorts of different kinds of things like this. So when we see behaviors, we quickly diagnose. Is it appropriate? I don't know. Okay, more. Right? You can't read that in the back? How much do I have to eat to be eligible for dessert? Those of you who are parents understand this. Okay? So what I want to think about, this is the big thing. All right? Every time you think of call a kid attention seeking this year, change your attitude. Change your attitude. Get your school district to change. Talk about it as connection seeking. Okay? I truly mean this. Is one of the things we have to say as a part of this. Not already. Say as a part of this is we have to think about this is if you change your attitude towards this, it's going to change everything. Because earlier I said that all behavior is communication. Kids do not know how to say, excuse me, I'm having great difficulty meeting people. And the assignments you put in front of me are increasingly difficult, so therefore I'm not getting the assistance I need, and my grades are starting to show this. So I'm having some problems here. Could you provide me additional assistance? I need more time, kinds of things like this, They don't say that. They kick, yell, scream, punch, throw, fart, whatever is necessary to get attention. And so we have to think about they're seeking connections. The best day one of my kids had, and I was not there for this, all right? He brought in a box of matches. And he had learned how to, the wood matches, you could fling them, go like this, and it would fling and would light and fly through the air lit. The substitute said, I'm going to let him do that and let him satiate on that. Kids are standing around, flick it at me, see if you can catch me on fire. It was the best day of his life. He's trying to set kids on fire. Okay? He was attention seeking. He was constantly seeking this, so keep this in mind. Further, avoid blaming the child. Don't take challenging behaviors personally. It's about what works for that child. And this is what things about this is too often we take these behaviors personally. We think the kid is mad at us. They're not mad at you. You just happen to be the adult who's in front of the room right now drawing the big paycheck. Okay, maybe not so much over there, but okay. Okay? But you're interesting about this is you don't blame the child because this worked for them in the past. Okay? Where was I? Do you guys have TJ Maxx? Good. All right, good. Because I want to make sure you get the benefit. I watched a 15-year-old the other day throw an impressive tantrum. Well, okay, I'm guessing he's about 15, things like this. It was truly an impressive tantrum. Okay? Because he wanted some treat that they sold as you check out the aisle there. That's where they do the all impulse buy and things like this. He wanted this, and his mom said no. He was on the floor, and you know what? He got it. So what did I learn from that? I want a new bike. Yep, this weekend I'm going to throw a tantrum. Yep, if that's what it takes. I only have 10 bikes. Those of you who are bikers, you know how many bikes you need is whatever one more than what you currently have. Okay? I need another travel bike. Yeah, things like this. Okay? It's never the student's fault. They're just knowing the organism's never wrong. The student is never wrong. They're just doing what they've learned to do. I mean this. They've learned. This has worked for them in the past. And what we have to think about this is why, and that's why they're doing it. They're not doing it because they're trying to piss you off. Yeah, maybe. All right? Okay? Because many of these students are just constantly seeking attention. Right? There was a kid, and my daughter worked in an autism classroom this past spring, who loved to flush his mask down the toilet. And he'd go, bye-bye mask, bye-bye mask, bye-bye, bye, and watch it spin, things like that. Masks, especially the thick ones, here, they can clog a toilet. You may not believe me, but feel free to try this at home. things like this. But he got a ton of attention. A lot of people came scrambling, all these things, and they stopped working in the room because they had to get a plumber and all these things going on. It prevented him from having to do the next test. Okay? More. Okay? Why? Come. Why? How do we manage behaviors? It doesn't help to blame kids. It doesn't help to blame the parents. Right? And I really mean this, is we often spend a lot of our time blaming others for the kids' problems. Okay? Control what you can control. Focus on what you can do. Okay, keep this in mind, okay? Teachers and parents do what we do because it immediately works to lessen behaviors, all right? So if it's worked in the past by like stomping on a kid's foot to stop him from screaming, yeah, we will do that again. Don't do that. Okay? But we do these things because it works. It reinforces what we want. We have to think about what they need as opposed to solely what we want as a part of this. Okay? So I'm just going to identify patterns. I'm going to skip down. Okay? I'm going to stop here and take questions. Shift from asking, how do we get a student to behave, or how can I get the student to stop doing what, to what is causing this behavior and how we can mitigate that, or what skills does this student need to succeed? If you can spend more time on that last question, what skills does the student need to succeed? Because let me tell you about the due process hearing that I spent a couple hours on yesterday, and it's my 11:45 call. So we have a kid who's coming back from a private school with significant behaviors, really significant behavior issues. He used to bite the teacher, bite the aide, throw things. He'd previously broken a teacher's clavicle, all sorts of issues, things like that. He's 9. He's impressive. He's the skills this kid has. The parents that were busing him to a private placement, which was an hour and 45 minutes one way to get there. And the parents said, I don't want him to spend 3 to 3.5 hours on the bus every single day. Okay? So we're demanding that he come back, and they have a lawyer. We're demanding that he comes back to the local school. Okay? And the school said, we'll set up a program for him. It starts Thursday. Okay? We're setting up a program for him, things like this, but we need a backup in case it doesn't go well. I said, that's fine. I appreciate wanting to have a backup in case it doesn't go well, but we need to be able to document all the things we did to provide success for this kid in this classroom. Identifying the problems, identifying the issues, identifying the supports that we did, the training we did for the teacher, the other things like this, as opposed to, it just didn't go well. We tried once. We'll see you in a week. So when we talk about this, okay, what skills does the child need to succeed? And then teach those skills. Teach those skills so the kid can be successful. Teach those skills so the kid can learn, that the kid can actually make progress. So when I talk about this, I want you to shift your thoughts to kids who are seeking connections, as opposed to just kids who are posing problems for you. Because all behavior is a form of communication. And these kids just can't articulate this. If you can get your teachers to think about it this way, you will have a much more successful year. And I truly mean this. Right? And we're spending an increased amount of time explaining this to teachers and getting them to respond. Get them to do this. Okay? We have a few minutes for questions. Okay, so that's a great question. What would a hearing officer look for as a part of this? Goals that teach the kids skills as opposed to solely obeyance of the law. Too often we see goals that say, kid will be quiet for 60 out of 90 minutes. Okay? The question is, if a dead person can do it, it's a bad goal. I mean this literally. Okay? If a dead person can do it, it's a bad goal. And so what you have to think about is have it be much more active as opposed to a passive thing. So the kid will stop bothering the teacher. Because I'm well aware there are some kids out there who bother you. All right? It is their mission in life. That's what they wake up every morning and they say, what can I do to bother that? I'm going to school because the teacher will be upset if I don't bother her. And it's behavior. Behavior is communication. Because you have to think about when we do FBAs, what do we look at? Is the kid seeking attention? Is the kid trying to escape? So what are the kids doing as a part of this? What is this behavior? You're exactly right. The behavior is a part of communication. So when we write IEP goals, we need to make sure that they're much more active as about what we're teaching the kids. So that's what a hearing officer would look for, hopefully, that it be something that we actually have, and then we have documentation about improving that as a part of that, as opposed to just having the kid just stifle something. So teach them more appropriate manners of how to deal with those kinds of issues. I actually may have one on here. Here, okay? Ineffective. Student will decrease the number of times he asks for help at the teacher's desk from 5 times a class period to 0 times. Remember, that's a dead person goal. A dead person can do that and get 100% of that goal, bad goal, okay? Following direct instruction from the teacher on how to when to raise a hand, student will increase his use of hand raising to get the teacher's attention from a level of 30% of opportunities to 80% of opportunities. So we're going to increase what's going on as opposed to just having them do this, okay? Another one. Student will decrease the frequency of redirection needed by staff from 10 per day to 1. And you can see why teachers would write this. You absolutely can see why teachers would write this goal. 2, when given directions by the staff, student will improve his rate of following directions, including asking for clarification from 30% to 70% as measured by teacher observation. Still, it's not perfect, but it's a change in the other direction, as opposed to just being a passive thing to being an active thing. That we're going to teach the kid how to do something appropriately that will hopefully transfer from one location to another. Because as you know, many of these kids have trouble generalizing from location to location. And that poses a significant problem as we try to provide instruction for them. Okay? Right? So, oh, yeah. So, thank you very much. I'm going to be around the next 2 days. Ask me questions. All right?